used to sit and just like record radio shows onto my like MiniDisc stereo. I used to love it because I had a lot of like great gems on there. That kind of disappeared. And then I had all these mini discs and I was like, well, I can't do anything with them.
This is the Techsploder podcast, conversations with tech professionals about being human in a binary world. Episode 26, Lexy Savvides. Techsploder is made possible by the financial support of our patrons like Howard Salmon, Joseph Ackbrid, and my buddy Ron Richards. If you like what you hear, head on over to patreon.com/Jason Howell. You can support the show directly, and thank you for making independent podcasting possible. Hello and welcome to the Techsploder podcast. I'm Jason Howell, and I'm super excited for this week's guest. We've got Lexy Savvides, an award-winning video journalist, former editor-at-large at CNET. Lexy began her career actually on Sydney's FBI radio before joining CNET Australia in 2008. Then moved to CNET's San Francisco headquarters in 2015, where she led much of the site's on-screen gadget coverage for nearly a decade. She had shows like Beta Test and More or Less. She actually earned 2 Gold Telly Awards and a Webby honoree nod during her time doing that. And just recently, at the end of 2024, Lexy left CNET after 9 years in San Francisco to launch her own independent studio, where she now produces tech reviews for her YouTube channel, Instagram, and TikTok. So there's a lot of overlap here. We get into it and so much more. Let's dive in with this conversation that I had with Lexy Savvides. Lexy, it is so great to get you on Techsploder. Thank you for taking time for me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Such an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so stoked to be able to do this. Part of the reason is because our stories in some ways are relatively like I watched you break out from CNET and go independent, and there was a lot that I saw kind of in that transition of which you're kind of fresh at the start of for the most part, where I'm like, oh yeah, I can completely identify with where Lexy is. So first of all, congratulations. It's a big step.
Thank you. Yes, it's a big step, but I'm really excited to just, be able to make the content that I want to make and connect with an audience of people who love tech.
That's the beauty, right? Is like at this point, you get to decide what are the things that really get me excited, that I get to spend my time with. And you know what? I'm not going to do that one because reviewing headphones bores me, or whatever the case may be.
I love headphones, so.
Do you?
I do. I love
Okay,
headphones.
so then tell me this, because I'm like an audiophile. I consider myself an audiophile. I've been into music for a very long time, and I know you've got a music background, which I definitely want to talk to you about. But when it comes to reviewing headphones, like I always want to do it because I love things that sound good. I find it really hard sometimes, though, to differentiate between, like, to know how to communicate the differentiation between them. How do you tackle that? Because it's really difficult for me.
It's very difficult. I think there are kind of several camps of people who enjoy headphone reviews, and there's people who want the really technical deep dives. They want to see all of the waveforms. They want to see all of the testing data. They want to sort of see, charted information about how they compare to other headphones. And there are people that have the access and the knowledge to be able to do that in such a great way. I would love to do that, but I'm not one of them. I don't have an audio engineering background, and I freely admit that. I am, I guess, a little bit more like you, an audiophile. I love listening to headphones. I have that music background, but I don't have that kind of level of technical expertise in sound engineering that lets me do that. So there has to be a different way that you can communicate that to an audience of people that doesn't necessarily want that. I mean, if you think about a lot of people that are buying headphones, they just want something that sounds good, that wants something that's comfortable. And so be able to communicate that in more of a fun and approachable way for an audience that's not necessarily looking for all of that technical deep dive data is what I try and do. Do I do it successfully? Well, I used to do it at CNET, I think, decently, but I haven't taken that step as the independent world yet. So I'm looking forward to trying to find different ways to experiment with it and different ways to kind of communicate that. But it's all about I love having a playlist that I kind of default to that has lots of different genres that, has songs that are familiar to people and that are not familiar to people maybe. And I always provide that kind of link for people to go and listen to those tracks and then be able to talk about the particular nuances in the songs that I hear versus what I don't hear on certain headphones. So I find that's kind of a nice way to kind of get that information across. It's a little bit more interactive. And it's definitely it's a nice excuse to share some music that I like to listen to, my headphone jams playlist, essentially. So many different ways of doing it. There's many, many different people out there that are looking for headphones. So it's just about finding, I guess, the way that you like to communicate how you want to talk about music and sound quality to an audience of people that is hopefully receptive to that. Because it's, like me, you're on YouTube and so many different other platforms, and being able to find people and communicate in a way that people want to kind of are drawn to the content that you're trying to make is kind of a part of the fun part of this. It's all about experimentation and really trying to sort of niche down in what makes you. So I would just encourage you to just start talking about it in a way that makes sense to you and see what happens.
Yeah. No, I've definitely spent time, with a lot of different headphones, like OnePlus. They have so many of their wireless headphones that come out on a regular basis, and I love them and I use them regularly. I also have like the CMF. I've got a bunch of them within reach right now, and in the early days of true wireless earbuds, for whatever reason, it was easier for me to do reviews about them because it was new and it was fresh. And it was like, okay, well, these are actually a little more comfortable than those. And, these don't have the low end response that I'm looking for and everything. But now, kind of similar to smartphones, the playing field has really leveled. Like, it's pretty easy to find a pretty solid pair of true wireless earbuds, and they probably don't cost a lot, which means there's just a ton of them out there. So it's like the differences are few and far between at a certain point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also does come down to price, as you said, in so many different ways. Like, there are some really great pairs under $50 that surprise me with how good they sound. Do they last as long as a more expensive pair? Probably not. That's what I think probably the biggest thing that I've found. So then you have to also factor in, environmental concerns. Like, are the batteries replaceable? In most cases, they're really not. With AirPods, so
super irresponsible. Yeah, this category of devices, for the most part, when they're done, they're done. They just go into a landfill, and that feels awful.
Well, hopefully, e-waste, if you participate in those sorts of programs, it does hopefully get reused. But in
some way, shape, or form.
Exactly. There's so many other factors that you have to think about just beyond price and comfort as well when you think about this too. At least I think about that. And does it keep me up at night? Sometimes.
Well, so we've kind of started off on a little bit of the music side of things, which I'm happy about because, like I said, I'm big into music. I have a DJing background from way back when, and I didn't know this about you. You have like a music radio background before CNET, at which, you were at CNET for quite a while. I think you started 2008, and then, you just went independent at the beginning of this year or the end of last year. So that's quite a lot of time at CNET. But before that, you were in radio at a station called FBI Radio. Interesting name, at least here in the US. That feels interesting. But I had never heard of it before, and I looked it up, and I'm like, man, they've got some really great music on there. Tell me a little bit about your time there. I'm curious.
Yes. So not FBI as would be associated with in the US. It does confuse a lot of people when I say I used to work at FBI, and they go, what? It stands for Free Broadcast Incorporated. It's one of Sydney's great independent radio stations. It's entirely listener funded, and it just provides a great platform for supporting not only local Sydney and Australian music, but also genres from all around the world. It gives young broadcasters a chance to really, cut their teeth in the world of radio producing and audio engineering as well, which is fantastic. I hosted a couple of different shows there over the years. I started off doing like the graveyard shifts and then managed to work my way up to doing a great weekend show, which I loved. So if you want to find some kind of really, really cool cutting edge music, FBIRadio.com is the place to go. Like, I haven't been on air there for, I want to say like 10 plus years, but I still love it. I still listen to it, and there are some great shows, and it's really like the next generation of great radio talent and music coming out of there. So, highly recommend if you want to listen to also some Australian accents in the middle of the night. Why not?
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. So what kind of music were you focusing on there? Was it more electronic based or what I'm curious.
All sorts of genres. I mean, my like kind of love is a little bit more on the like kind of electronic dance side, but I love all sorts of things. I used to play such an eclectic mix, a real grab bag of content. I should go in and actually find some of my old playlists, I think, and have a little bit of a retrospective. That would be fun. But
Do they keep old broadcasts and old episodes so you could find like Lexy early on in her career?
I do. Oh, yeah. So I actually had like a few. I definitely have a few of the recordings still on like a hard drive of some of my favorite shows that I did.
Yeah.
And I think some of the playlists are still around. Like you can't listen to the audio necessarily on demand, but you can see kind of the songs that were played. And I think I did have like some interviews on my sound when I was putting everything on SoundCloud, 1 or 2 interviews. And I listened back to them recently, and you would not believe how my accent has changed over the past 10 years since moving to the US. Yeah, I listened back and I sound so Australian on those recordings. And then I listen to my voice now and I sound less Australian, more kind of definitely not American, but a very different accent. So
kind of like it's flattened over time. That's so interesting.
A little bit, yeah. People definitely question my, Aussiness when I go home, but I think it sort of comes back out a little bit when I do visit back home. It comes back.
I've always wondered that too, is like when you're born somewhere and obviously you adopt the accent of where you are. Why, I've wondered that if you live somewhere for a long enough time, does it really influence kind of how your voice shifts and changes? But you're saying that it does. I just kind of assumed that it's kind of locked into place at a certain point, but that's so interesting.
I mean, I think overall, I don't think anyone's going to be confusing me for an American accent.
No, of course not. Right.
But I think for me specifically, maybe it's about how I've, incorporated myself into the US and US culture as well. Maybe that's just something that's a trait of me and my voice. I don't think I can make a broad generalization. Like everybody who moves to a different place will suddenly sound a little bit different.
Sure.
But for me, for sure, I've noticed that definitely.
Super interesting. What drew you to radio? Like to get into the radio side of things, like in hosting and stuff. I mean, it's all interconnected because then you went on to CNET, and of course, it's more of in front of the camera, so there's more a broadening of skills there and exposure there. But what pulled you into that side of broadcast?
It was a love of music, but also I had a period of my life where I became painfully shy. And I was really unable to communicate very well with people, both in spoken conversations. I think I started off as a very, outgoing child. And then throughout the years of like high school, I became more and more introverted. And then when I finished high school, I thought, well, I've got to start being a little bit better at presenting both myself and, my thoughts. So I thought, well, there was a gig that opened up at a local radio station. This was before FBI radio. And I thought, well, let's go. Let's learn a bit about radio. It sounds kind of fun. And I fell in love with it, Jason. Like radio was just the most amazing medium because I'm just talking to one person. And it's like that's kind of the fundamental rule when you start out in broadcasting or in any kind of medium, really. It's just you're talking to just one person, whether that's your mom, your friend, your sibling, or, just even just one person. You're just picturing who you're talking to, and that's your conversation. And that sort of opened this world for me of just being able to talk. And sometimes then you can't shut me up. So, but yeah, from then it just became one of those things that I love to be able to play music. I love to be able to communicate about that music to that person that I was talking to.
Yeah.
And and then the rest kind of went from there. But it's so much fun being able to press play on a song and talk about how this song either transformed you, or the relationship it has to a broader musical context, or just this sounds really cool. You got to listen to this. It's sharing at the end of it, isn't it? It's just making kind of that connection with people. So that's what I loved about it. And yeah, and it helped me become way less painfully shy at that stage and become more like I was as a really young child as an adult. So that was a great part of what radio gave me.
So interesting. I can completely relate with that because radio and podcast share a lot in common, as you well know. It's kind of like the delivery mechanism is a little different, but a lot of what you said, most of what you said, really applies to podcast. And I would say for myself, before getting into podcasting, this is about 2005, 2006, before getting into podcasting, it's not like I was shy with my friends, but if I was around people I didn't know, I would have a really hard time carrying on conversation. It was really distracting, kind of anxiety driven. Like I felt like I've got to fill the air with something and it's gonna come out all wrong. And I was very second guessy about how I communicate with people that I had never met before. And I just really didn't enjoy it. But doing this for as long as we do, that like it sharpens a blade on that perspective. And now, thankfully, I can look back and be like, this has taught me a lot about how to communicate with people outside of just the media that I use to broadcast whatever my thoughts are.
Do you ever go back to old broadcasts or old podcasts or even old CNET videos and watch and you go, either this was terrible or, wow, I was actually better than I thought I was. Why was I so hard on myself?
Yeah, you can get both perspectives, can't you? Because like I remember when I started producing Buzz Out Loud way back when, and I was kind of behind the camera before, ever really being brought into the conversation in any general sense. I would watch the podcast happening in front of me and wonder how they do that. And then at some point I was brought into the microphone. And what I had for a very long time was an awareness of, oh my goodness, it's time for me to talk right now. What am I going to say right now? It better be valuable, blah, 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 just this voice in my mind. And when I go back and listen to some of those episodes, it's like I can plug right into that mindset and remember what I was feeling when I was talking. And it's like, it's kind of squirmy and embarrassing and everything, but it's all part of how we grow and develop. And yeah, so in some parts of that don't get any easier. Like, I'm sure you've had at some point the oh my goodness, I can't stand to listen to my voice thing. I think a lot of people are just self-aware of how they look or how they sound in a recording, and it's really hard to work around that.
It is. It does. I mean, I'm fortunate that I had a lot of kind of experience of getting that cringe factor out of the way earlier on from radio and being a producer. So I was really used to kind of isolating when I was producing other people, and then I could translate that to myself, being able to isolate somebody's voice from them as, kind of the personality, and then being able to just sort of listen and produce that as opposed to having that cringe factor. So I'm a little bit more used to it, but yeah, as you said, I still, sometimes I watch videos that I've made or I listen to podcast appearances and I'm just going, oh, that is just well, Lexy, what did you say that for? Why did you do that? So it doesn't go away. It gets easier, but it doesn't always go away. That's for sure.
Boy, I so know that feeling. For me, what I realize, the thing that I'm critical about myself in interviews and stuff is that I take too long to get to the point. It's like I've got all this set up and all this stuff that I want to say, and then I listen to it back. I'm like, dude, you could have said that in one sentence and just let them talk and get out of the way, It's hard. It's hard. But you're doing a great job, and I've loved. I'm not fishing, by the way.
No, you are. I've loved seeing. I mean, because you're a CNET legend, right? And so everybody that kind of comes after kind of looks back at. I mean, I think I can safely say this. You were part of the cohort of the glory days of CNET, I think, and just everybody, just looks up to you and the entire crew that was there, and especially everybody on video who does an on-camera role like I used to there would just look back and go, yeah, that was some great content. you all did. So
it was fun. It was fun. Without that 5 years that I was at CNET, like we had a great time. And I immediately feel connected to anyone that has done the CNET thing, even if I hadn't really worked closely with them throughout the time that they were there, or they came after I was already gone from CNET. It's like, we're all part of the CNET family, even if we don't work there anymore. It's it's bigger than that.
That's true.
So thank you for saying that. It feels really good.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about kind of where you're at right now. Obviously, your channel, Lexy Savvides, Savvides, so people should know to search that. But I'm curious to know, because your shift has been big, and I can really identify with the fact that you came from this mammoth organization, and now you've transitioned into independent work, and they're just... Even though in many ways we're doing the same thing, we're creating the same type of content, the roles are completely different. I'm curious to know if there's any easy to point to lesson that you've learned in the short amount of time that you've been doing this, or maybe even something that surprised you in that transition.
Oh, I don't know if it surprised me, but you have such a great found appreciation of when you have to do absolutely everything yourself versus being able to kind of outsource to people that have very strong skill sets in particular areas. So, I mean, it's just, it's a huge learning curve going from a place where, your primary role is really to sort of ideate and present great content. And then you have a whole suite of people around you who are so talented at either video editing or audio editing or lighting or producing specifically that you can kind of rely on as a broader team. And then you go independent. I'm sure you've had this experience as well. And then all of a sudden you are all of those people.
Everything.
And I've had to, like, over the past 4 months, I've had to teach myself how to use an entirely new editing suite. I'm not the world's strongest video editor. I don't know anything about motion graphics. I'm learning everything as I go on the fly and just crossing my fingers that it works and hoping that, people who are watching have some grace if it doesn't look exactly perfect or sound exactly perfect in certain ways. I mean, you do the best you can and you learn as fast as you can. But yes, again, you have a great found appreciation of the huge team of people behind you. And the surprising thing is, I had a lot of experience during COVID of kind of doing a lot of things myself. So I think that was almost like a little bit of a mini crash course. So I'd have to set up like a whole studio space. I'd have to run lighting. I'd have to run audio. I'd have to run the camera. The amount of times that I would hit start and hit record and my audio recorder wouldn't work. And or the battery would run out, and I didn't know because there was no one there to tell me. And you have this moment where you think, great, I did a fantastic job. That video is done. I'm ready to ship it off to somebody who's going to edit this for me. And you look at your memory card and it wasn't recording. It's corrupted. The audio wasn't rolling. You had food in your teeth. I don't know what it was. And
you got to do it over again. Got to start over. That was the best take too. By the way, that was the best take that you'll ever have. And now you got to start over again and recreate that magic. Yeah.
I mean, I have that all the time in the world of being independent. And so that's, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. There's a lot of swear words that come out, I think, when you realize that happens.
Yeah. That really is the big shift, I think, coming from the perspectives that you and I both share, coming from a team. It really helps. It helps me to appreciate the skill and the awesomeness of the people that I've worked with in the past.
Yeah.
Like, I think to a certain degree, you kind of take it for granted when it's just the normal. And then when it's not the normal anymore, then it's easy to go back. Then it becomes easier to go back and see it through fresher eyes and be like, man, that person was amazing at editing because he or she was able to knock that out in like 2 hours and it takes me 10 or whatever the case may be. It's such a different experience going from a team to completely solo.
It is. The other thing I would say about, shifting to independent though is like the freedom that it does open up in the way that I like to be able to communicate. So
Mm,
I feel like it's the most authentic version of me. It's the most sort of raw, I guess, raw version of me in the
mm,
best way possible. Whereas I think when it goes through multiple people and multiple layers of production in a team environment, you gain so much from that through other people's experience, but you also can potentially lose a little bit of what makes you as a personality or you as a journalist or presenter or however you want to kind of term yourself. So going independent has definitely made me appreciate that, like, I do have that full kind of vision over the entire process.
mhm.
But yeah, when I'm editing at 2 in the morning and I'm like, please, this is so hard. Um,
And
why is this my 20th take?
and not just the editing, right? It's kind of like at
Yeah.
the end, you publish, and then there's all the work of making sure that people see that you published and spreading it around on social.
Hmm.
And like right now, I'm starting to kind of lean into pulling clips from podcasts, kind of longer, longer clips. And every single one of those takes X amount of time and attention on title and description. And it's an endless stream of work. At a certain point, you just kind of have to realize, like, I am one person. What is the most effective use of my time? What are the things that make the most sense and that
You
I
know how
enjoy?
hard it is. Yeah, exactly. It is what do you, I mean, that's sort of curious, like as someone who's also moved to the independent space, like what is the thing that you most enjoy about the process that you
Mm.
didn't necessarily expect?
Oh, I that I didn't necessarily expect. That's the twister, because I would say the thing
Yeah.
that I most enjoy is just being able to decide on a whim that that's the thing I'm doing next. It could also be, though, that that's kind of to my detriment, because in being so impulsive with what I choose to do, sometimes I overlook really obvious things, which is, probably at least to a certain degree, a part of my ADHD brain, overlooking the obvious stuff. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, that might not be the
Yeah.
thing that I least expect. I mean, I know that the things that I don't love, in my heart of hearts, I don't really enjoy the marketing aspect. I don't enjoy going back over something 20 times to extract value and do that stuff. I think the thing that I love the most is picking a new thing and doing it. And then when I'm done with that, being able to just look over there and be like, that's the thing I'm doing now. Let's go. Let's create, And
Mhm.
that's much easier to do when you've got a team to take care of the rest of the stuff. I don't know. You gotta make choices. You gotta make sacrifices. It's not all driven by me. It's kind of driven by necessity to a certain degree.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have to think like what resonates with the audience that you have and the audience that you want to appeal to,
For
essentially,
sure.
too. And that I think is also, like to your point, the marketing of it, the packaging of it, kind of the analytical side is something that it's a very, very particular skill set. And I have so much respect for people that have that in their arsenal, essentially,
Hmm.
because it is hard. As somebody who primarily thinks about content and being able to, like, as I call it, make the meat and potatoes, but like the
That's what
person
it
that
is.
can, it's making the meat and potatoes, right? And
Yeah.
then the person that can put the garnish on it, that can package it in this way that makes it appealing, that's for me at least the really tough part, because I know I make good content, but is it something that somebody wants to click on? And
Mhm.
that's always like, that's a skill set that is so valuable. And I think, the people that are the most successful in the industry have a little bit of all of that. I mean, obviously, if you have the ability to outsource to, a team or a bunch of people that are really skilled at that, that's the ultimate. But the
Mhm.
really successful independent creators that are just doing it all themselves, I think, have that ability to kind of really hone in on that. And it's a skill. I hope that I can learn it too.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
really hope so. Yeah.
The more you do, the more you work through the difficulties of, oh, that didn't work. Let me try this. Oh man, that was horrible. Let me try this. And at a certain point, over a long enough time, you do get better. And it's just not always comfortable getting better. I think I have a better answer for what you asked, because what
Okay.
you asked was more about what I didn't expect, but that I really enjoy. And I think you could probably identify with this on a deeper level too. I know the value of community in what we do, because if we don't have people in our corner, we don't really have anything. We can create all the great content like you were saying, but if
Yeah.
we can't find the audience for that or give them what they're looking for, then kind of what's the point? It'll just stagnate and stay there. And I think the thing that has surprised me, and I wonder if this has happened for you, is the people who are so committed to the work that I do that they've reached out to me and said, hey, I want to help you. I
Oh,
appreciate what you do. I can do this stuff that I hear you say you don't like doing. I can do that, and I'm happy to do it. And I've got a few amazing people who have done that and literally made my life more comfortable and what I'm doing more effective because of it. That I did not expect, and it's been amazing.
oh, that's wonderful. I love to hear that. That's so heartwarming as well, because you've made that genuine connection with people and
Mm-hmm.
and that's such a testament to what you do. I think that's the ultimate, really, is when you can make that connection
100%.
and you have somebody reach out to you, because I feel like a lot of the time, maybe you've had this experience too, you feel like you create content almost in a vacuum because,
Mm-hmm.
well, at least when I was doing it for a larger media company, like the feedback that you would get would either be nothing or it would be negativity. As
Mm-hmm.
you know, they sort of do it, and you go, "Oh, well, maybe it's not resonating in the way that I think it does." But I think there's been a definite dramatic shift that I've noticed in going independent, is that the sense of people that actually like what you do as an individual, like, and people take the time to reach out and leave a
Mm-hmm.
comment or even just support in different ways, which is so, like, it's heartwarming. I know it sounds really cheesy to say that, but it's so nice because I feel like it's been a hard journey being a content creator for a media company as well. It's like it's been amazing and wonderful, but it's also been hard because there's a lot of the time when you're on the receiving end of just a lot of people's negativity, for not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily just because it's you and your content. It just is because you're seen as a representative of a larger brand. But
Sure.
as an independent, hopefully I think people have a little bit more of a kind of an understanding of, oh, like, they're just doing it on their own and it's them. It's not necessarily, a big, corporation or anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's been kind of nice to see. And I'm so glad that you've had people to reach out and give you that support too. That's the ultimate, really.
It is. Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, community, behind podcasts, behind what we do on YouTube and all the other things. If you don't have that, man, you don't have that can only take you so far without that community. And it helps to not feel so isolated and alone, just sitting at a computer writing my reviews and doing moving on to the next thing. That's fun, that's enjoyable, but you got to have the community. I'm used to having an office with someone sitting next to me, and I don't have that anymore other than my dogs who come in every once in a while. But so yeah, it's really, really nice. With this show, I like to dive into the stuff that we are right now, and I like to get a little nostalgic. So I'm kind of curious. Actually, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of your nostalgic history with technology. That's coming up here in a moment. All right, this is part of the meat and potatoes of Techsploder, in my view, is kind of diving into what makes your tech story very unique. And it's not just where you worked and what you do. It really all kind of, in my experience, it all kind of goes back to some particular moment in your life where you either made the recognition that technology means something greater to you, or you were introduced to a product that you were just like, oh my goodness, that product opened my eyes to what technology could be. Maybe it's even your earliest technology memory or something along those lines. That's just a few kind of ideas. But what comes to mind when I kind of set that up? Is there a thing in technology that you're like, oh yeah, that's it?
I guess there were kind of two moments for me. The first was when we got our first family computer. And
Ah,
so, it arrived. This was all this like newfangled, oh, what is this? It's a screen and a keyboard, and it
was it
arrived, it got set
Adele? Like,
up.
what
No,
do you?
it was a very generic put together, tower that a family friend kind of brought over, and it was running DOS.
Uh-huh.
I guess. And I was sitting there going, oh, what is this newfangled machine? This is amazing. And immediately I was drawn to it. I immediately felt like I knew how to use it.
Mhm.
And it was, I was really young at the time. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old or something. And then I got straight on and I started playing a game that was on it. And I was absolutely engrossed in it. So much so that my parents had to sort of say, no, we need to remove you from this. Like, this is not a great idea to have as your primary area of focus. Like, because I was locked in, Jason. Like, I just I could not be torn away. So there was that moment. And then once we kind of had, the next computer, I think beyond that this was just for word processing specifically, and it had like 1 or 2 games on it. But then the next computer that we had, I really started going, oh, there's this stuff that I can do. I can start learning like HTML. I can start coding. This was really like, oh, there's a browser on this. I can learn how to hook up to this thing called the internet. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started really kind of getting into the world of coding and, making my own web pages and being a real geek from an early age. I studied comp sci back in the day at college, university. And then I decided I didn't want to be a coder. So I thought, well, what else could I do with that move in tech? So it was really like, getting deep into that whole world of, PCs, building PCs, adding RAM, coding and all of that. But then there was the other side, which was, I remember the first time I was really young. I was in hospital for a few days and there was it was in the kids' hospital. And so they brought in entertainment and then they had a console and it was like being wheeled around to certain kids on different beds. And I was sitting there like, what is this? This looks really cool. And then I was like, can I have a go at that? And it was the Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And I was hooked. It was like one of those moments where you just lock in. Yeah. And I was playing, I don't know, it was Super Mario probably. And I just was like, this is amazing. I need this in my life. And so then the Nintendo console gamer version, Lexy, came out. And again, like screens were just a huge part of my childhood, for better or for worse, really. But that was one of the other things that kind of really fostered that love of technology. It's just going, this is so cool. I kind of likened it to, that feeling when you kind of open a book and you get so transported into a different world. It's kind of was the same feeling for me. Like I grew up, I also loved reading, but it was that same feeling that I got from turning on those computers for the first time and interacting with them, or playing, those early games on the Super Nintendo and just having that transformative moment of going, I'm in another world and almost like there's nothing else going on around me because I can completely lock into that. And that was just the most amazing feeling. I'm trying to recapture that all the time with new technology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's almost like my benchmark of like, is this transformative enough to give me that moment of this is world that exists in a different space that it's transported me into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's harder and harder to do as you get older in the world of technology, and that's part of the reason why I love nostalgia around technology, because it reminds me of that, right? Like as you're talking about kind of your experience diving into a computer, like what came to mind for me was going to my aunt's house, and she had a PC, and she had King's Quest. I don't know if you ever played the old school kind of like point and click King's Quest. I think it was Sierra Online, and I would have that same experience. I would get lost in that kind of that journey and that world. And it's like I would almost see, like when I wasn't there playing, I could pretend or imagine what it was like to live in that world when I was playing or doing my own thing as a kid. And I love remembering what that felt like, because as we get older, it is harder to find that kind of connection with smartphones, right? Like they kind of stopped being interesting out of the sheer fact that they're just a smartphone. They're so ubiquitous now, but there was a time when they were new and they really did capture our imagination. It's just, times change, I guess.
Yeah, and I think they capture our imaginations in slightly different ways. It's more, I think, now of an an engineered addiction in certain ways. And in terms of like the tools that we're using on phones are specifically in many times engineered to kind of capture our attention. So it has a similar effect, but it's almost without that wonder and without that feeling that you're left with that makes you feel enriched, right? So if you compare, sometimes you'll get sucked into scrolling on TikTok and, the algorithm seems to be surfacing stuff that you're interested in, but it gives you that almost same effect, like you've got nothing else going on around you. You're in this world, but you leave it and you don't feel as satisfied. You don't feel as
empty.
Enriched. You feel a little bit more empty, right? And so I think that's the difference. So I think the attention grabbing and that creation of that world is still there, but it's without that, I guess, sure, it's that childlike kind of fascination with it. And those experiences, it's kind of hard to separate, because I think as you get older, you obviously have that nostalgia that you look back on and you go, oh, didn't that feel wonderful? But we still have the ability to do that. It's just that the platforms and the tools that we have are not necessarily engineered to create the wonder anymore. They're engineered to create the attention grabbing nature of it. So that's
and
also
not let go. And which I can remember being a kid not wanting to let go, but it came from a different place. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. The engineered aspect of it. I like how you put that. Is there a piece of technology that you loved that you got rid of and you regret not having anymore? Like, so that might be a hard one to kind of throw on you, but
yeah, there's multiple things. I guess I think the biggest ones probably relate to music. So
yeah,
I had a stereo that had a mini disc player in it. And look, mini disc was not the most, it was a great format for a very specific use case, but it was so expensive and it was so sort of difficult to kind of get that, uptake. And you couldn't find, I used to sit and just like record radio shows onto my like mini disc stereo. And I used to love it because I had a lot of like great gems on there. And then this, like, people used to sit and record like on cassettes. And so I'd sit on mini discs. And so when that kind of disappeared, and then I had all these mini discs and I was like, well, I can't do anything with them. Like I love this format. It's just, it was almost like, it was just almost too good or too early in the time frame. Something, I don't know. It was a difficult format. It was a troubled format, but I still love it, and I still wish that I had the ability to kind of access those mini disc recordings that I made. And
don't have those anymore. Don't have those like off in a box somewhere.
They probably are somewhere in Australia, somewhere in a box in Australia. They're probably there, and then. Yeah, and the same too for, I guess this all comes back to music, doesn't it? It's the DiscMan. That was kind of my love as well, because I could take my music anywhere, and I had a huge collection of CDs. And so, as CDs started to be phased out, obviously, and didn't become as, ubiquitous of a format, I still miss that kind of ability to sit and just listen to an album from start to finish.
Yes. Yeah.
On and the iPod, I guess, in many ways, like had that ability and capability as well, but it didn't have the same effect because you didn't have that, again, lock-in moment of just listening to that one artist or that one CD of whatever compilation it was, and just having that end-to-end moment. So I do miss that. And also my attention span is completely shot these days. I don't know about you, Jason, but like, can you sit down and listen to an album? I don't have the time, number one, but I also don't have the attention span.
No, it's really it's very different. I think we've been deconditioned or unconditioned. Would that be the word? I'm not sure what the word is, but yeah, I think over time we've been exposed to this other way of sampling pieces, and the sampling a song from a track, because the singles approach is just what works on these digital platforms now versus the album approach. And I gotta really, it's like, if it's going to happen, if I'm going to listen to an entire album, it's got to be like when I'm on a drive somewhere and I'm going to be there for an hour. And even then it's not a sure thing. Like I kind of have to convince myself to do it because there's so many other ways you could go, podcast, audiobook, whatever. And am I sure that I want to commit an hour to listening to this album start to finish? Like, it used to be a no-brainer, right? It used to be very tangible. And it's like, the act or the art of like choosing the CD or choosing the album and putting it where it goes and knowing this is the action that I go through in order to listen to this start to finish. And it was just a different mentality than it is now.
Yeah, I think we've given over, like to your point, we've kind of given over to the luxury of having a lot of those decisions taken out of our hands. Like if you're listening on a streaming platform, you can just put on a playlist that you didn't curate, or that the algorithm is kind of put together for you based on things that you might be interested in. And you kind of fall into that mentality, be like, well, I don't really know what to listen to, so I'll just listen to something that's been pre-made, or, you know, a podcast that's been put together, so from start to finish, in a way that I don't have to necessarily make those decisions. So I think that's also been a really interesting shift for me over the past few years, is as someone who was like a huge music enthusiast and still is, but the way in which I've consumed it has completely changed, because I don't go over to my CD library or, you know, my huge song library and decide what to listen to most of the time. It's often like, I'll just put on a playlist because it kind of knows a little bit more about my taste. Maybe I'll discover something else. And also, it's easier.
It's easier.
We've all fallen, I mean, I've fallen into that trap. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's another decision to be made sometimes. It's like, oh, I just don't have the time for another decision.
True.
You know, I keep threatening to get a record player again. Used to have them, you know, back when I was DJing. Of course, I had a couple of record players. But I keep saying, like, I want to get one, because then if I get one, then there will be albums that I will buy and I will make time for it. And I think the reason that I continue to not do that is because I'm afraid that if I do, I will prove myself wrong. That I'll get it and I'll get those things and I'll still not make the time for it. And I think part of that is just because the tracks are so well worn at this point. It's just a different time and a different approach to how we enjoy music these days.
I think so. And we're also getting older. And things change with time, right?
Oh my goodness. It always comes down to time. The older you get, the more time matters. Real quick before we kind of round this out, if technology did not exist, and you know, or rather if your tech universe and your life was not so entrenched in technology right now, what do you think you'd be doing right now with your time? Would it be music? Would it be making music? Or what would alternative universe Lexy do?
Oh, that's a great question. What would alternative Lexy be doing? Probably sitting with a tin can radio and just broadcasting and just playing songs on an old cassette player and hoping someone would come by and listen. And it probably would be sharing stuff about music, and it would be, but I also, the other part of me that, like, the reason why I love what I do is that I can I hope that I can really genuinely share things that are exciting and things that can make your life better. And that's really, really important to me. So I like to focus a lot on communicating and finding those kind of technologies. I mean, I know the question that you asked is if technology didn't exist, but technology has to exist in some way. There's something has to, even if we don't call it technology, it's something, hopefully, that the underlying drive of all of it, I hope, is something that will make people's lives better. And it's finding that aspect and sharing that aspect with people that is really important. So there'll be some variation of that I would probably be doing alongside playing random songs on an old cassette player with my tin can and talking into it and hoping someone's there listening.
Yeah. You know what I love about you keep mentioning the cassette, and something that I love is this like resurgence of appreciation of the imperfection of previous formats like the cassette. There is something about the sound. Like I've got a box, like literally I've got a box that is huge and filled with cassettes. A lot of them music that I created when I was, younger with different bands and whatever. But some of them like compilations that I made and whatever. And even though I could find those songs on Spotify and listen to them purely digital, pristine, blah, 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 there is something that when I actually have broken out the cassettes and played them through there's a warmth and kind of like an immediate like sound noise print that takes me to another time listening to that music in a different sense. And I just love that there's an appreciation for that there are people now selling their music on cassette because it's just, it takes you back to a different time and it has its own kind of signature to it. And that's amazing. I love that.
You know, in like 40 years, the people are going to be talking about, remember when I used to listen to that song on Spotify and how that used to sound, and now it's all like conducted into my brainwaves, and
who knows?
And the nostalgia, you know.
Yes.
Maybe that's what's going to happen. We're going to have a full circle moment like that, and people are going to be nostalgic for the era of streaming music.
Yes. Yeah. There is, I can't remember who it is, but there is a producer who, God, is it Rick Rubin? I can't remember, who basically said like any delivery mechanism of music, as flawed as it is, at the time will be unappreciated for those flaws, but eventually will be like people will strive for those flaws. And I think about like low bit rate MP3s and that kind of like washy, weird, kind of garbled. And I think that's like I don't believe that will happen with that, but I could be proven wrong. We'll just have to wait and see. Lexy, thank you so much for taking time with me today. This is a ton of fun, and I love getting the chance to get to know you a little better and talk to you about kind of the unique soup of technology that makes you you. So I appreciate you coming with me today. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on the show. I appreciate it, and it's been great fun.
Yeah, everyone should definitely go check out Lexy's YouTube. It's youtube.com/@Lexy Savvides with 2 V's. And go subscribe, check out Lexy's content. And thank you again, Lexy. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
All right, huge thank you to my guest once again, Lexy. It was so much fun getting to know her a little deeper, and just how the stories are so similar in many ways between us. Awesome stuff. If you want to find everything you need to know about this show, all things Techsploder can be found at techsploder.com. You can subscribe to the podcast, find all my video content there. I do produce a new Techsploder interview every month, and you can find all the ways on that site, as well as find them on my YouTube channel. That's at Jason Howell. Techsploder patrons through Patreon get exclusive access to the live pre-recordings of these interviews, as well as ad-free episodes once they finally publish, early access to my YouTube videos when there isn't an embargo in place, a Discord community, and so much more. In fact, executive producers get a lot more. You get a t-shirt, Techsploder t-shirt, and a fancy call out at the end of each episode, just like this week's executive producers, Jeffrey Maricini, John Cuny, and WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. That's patreon.com/Jason Howell. Thanks again to our guest, Lexy Savvides. Thanks to you for watching and listening. I'm Jason Howell, and I'll see you next time on another episode of the Techsploder podcast. Bye, everybody.